SJ, welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar.
We have been able to get new software from the IRS where that allows us to directly upload taxpayer information into the system, and then we conduct the rest of the return process, the quality interview, and any questions that the preparer might have for the actual taxpayer. We do that over the phone, and then to follow up, the taxpayer is still required to sign two documents. There is the intake form, which is the waiver that they're required to sign initially that allows us to file on their behalf, and then there'll be another form that they'll need to sign, which will be a virtual form that where they agree that we can host the quality review and all that stuff over the phone. And then the last part is they have to sign the actual return before we transmit it. And so we've arranged for a number of ways to do that. So we've worked with the IT department within the nation to develop a form that we'll send out via email that you can click on a link and electronically sign it that way. But if they're unable to do that, then they'll set up another time to come in and sign the actual return, and we can transmit it, and then they can also pick up a paper copy. If everything is completed virtually, so if they come in and submit their documents, and then they're able to sign the return virtually through the link that we're able to send out. Then all we'll do is we'll mail out a copy of the return to the address that's listed on the tax return that's filed. So that's generally how it will happen. But we've made some changes, hopefully, to help streamline it and help people that were unable to file last year to be able to file with us again this year.
Okay, now let's drop back a few yards here. Now, let's start with the description of the service you're offering. Mvskoke citizens, I presume, are eligible. But what do you do for them when dealing with their taxes? I mean, what's the services all about?
Yeah, so VITA is the Volunteer Income Tax Act. It was passed, I think, in 1971, so quite some time ago. But it's a IRS and federal government-sponsored program that helps low-income American citizens and taxpayers file their taxes for free. So that's the first requirement, and it's not just open to tribal citizens, but any taxpayer, any citizen within the jurisdiction of the Creek Nation, which is technically our service area. As a VITA provider, we can file taxes for anyone that meets the income guidelines. And so those income guidelines are generally about $57,000 a year per household. There's some circumstances where we're able to make exceptions, but they're pretty rare. But typically, if you make $50,000 or less, whether you file individually or if your household income is less than that, you're going to be able to qualify for the VITA program. But even in that, we only do certain returns. We're only allowed to do we're designated as a basic site, so we can only do certain returns up to a degree of difficulty. We can do some advanced returns, meaning we've been able to help some small or self-proprietor businesses, but typically we're not allowed to do more advanced returns, business returns for larger corporations, or if your income is past that $57,000, then that's kind of where we really get cut off. And any tax advice that we can give is limited to whether or not we're able to work on the return or not. If it's beyond our scope, then we really can't provide any advice or any other assistance with that, unfortunately. We can provide a list of references that we might be able to refer taxpayers out to, but unfortunately we're bound by what we're certified to do and what we're not.
So it's not going to be blanket help. You can get yourself into a bit of hot water if you overstep yourself, huh?
Yeah, and for good reasons that the IRS is, I feel like they've cleaned up, or they've tried to be more strict about certain policies to reduce the liability of their partners out in the field. And one of them being, and I know this is going to be a bigger change, as we've addressed it, is that many people have relied on the VITA program to be able to retain their tax returns, when they need them. So, the past several years that I've been in office, or I've only been with the tribe for now a year and a half, but we've received a number of calls, where people are requesting, to get a copy of their return because we've had it on file. We're no longer able to do that, and we've had to get rid of all of our, or properly dispose, I should say, of all of our previous year documents. So everyone this year is going to need to bring in all of their documents as though it's the first time they filed with us, because moving forward, we won't be able to retain any of that information. The IRS has strongly encouraged all VITA sites to no longer retain any copies of taxpayer information, whether it's a copy of their return or any of their personal information. So we went ahead and properly disposed of that, but we won't be able to provide a copy of anyone's return, even to employees, beyond the single copy that we'll issue when we complete the return this year and it's accepted and whatnot. So having said that, the IRS does have a portal online on their website that you can always request electronic copy of any previous year transcript that you may need. So that's something that they're focusing on more, is that citizens and taxpayers should have more direct access to their own records, and you shouldn't necessarily be seeking them from wherever you filed your return, unless it was somewhere like Jackson Hewitt or wherever you pay people typically. They have other policies where they can take on the liability to go ahead and retain your tax records year after year, versus us as a government site. It just is a larger liability that the IRS would rather not us have to deal with.
The documents that you referred to as being necessary, what would those include? What should someone bring in with them?
So certainly we need a valid form of photo ID. For most people, that's going to be their driver's license. If you don't have one, we can do a state ID or a tribal ID, but it's going to have to be within date. And then we also need a copy of your Social Security card. And Social Security cards for any dependents, or like if it's a single person, we need driver's license, Social Security. If it is a parent with dependents, we need the parents, a photo ID, their Social Security card, and then the Social Security cards of all dependents. If it's a couple, a married couple, we need the driver's license, Social Security cards of both spouses, and technically both of them need to be present to fill out the intake form, and then also present during the interview, as well as present for the signing of it. So a lot of that can be mitigated by the electronic version of it, so that won't be quite as big an issue. But if you're going to file jointly, you either have to have both people present for the intake to sign, or we have another way that taxpayers will be able to fill out the form at home and then bring it into us if they're able to do that, to work around the fact that both taxpayers generally need to be present if you're going to file a joint return. So that's the first thing. So the photo IDs and the Social Security cards, we have to have those, and we don't have any files to pull from a previous year. So unfortunately, if a taxpayer shows up to their appointment without all of their information, they're going to have to set up another appointment, because we can't upload documents separately. They all have to go in at the same time. So that's one thing to consider. But then also the other documents we need are going to be W-2s, gambling winnings, any sort of 1099 forms that you might get from contract work, from Social Security, disabilities, any number of those official forms of revenue that you might garner throughout the year. You'll need to bring those. And then one of the most important things that people often forget too is if your health care, if you purchase a plan through the marketplace, or depending on if you get supplemental health insurance through, like if you go to IHS and the tribe supplements your IHS coverage with a marketplace program or a marketplace insurance package, you often get forms for that, and people, because they're not aware of it, they may forget them, and we end up having to amend their return later on because they didn't know that they had those forms. But if you know you have any type of health care plan through the marketplace or anything other than your job, I would be looking for any documents you might need to bring in for when you file taxes. So those are going to be the big three: photo ID, Social Security card, W-2s, and then 1099s, as well as health insurance. So those are the main ones. But then, of course, there's other things. If a taxpayer wants to itemize, their receipts and they have all the records, then they can bring that. But the main things are going to be health insurance, income, photo ID, and Social Security card.
Okay, now listening to that long list, you've got quite a requirement there just to prove who they are and prove that they made this much money. What about folks who have things like oil royalties or retirement pension? Where do those fit in?
So those also fit in for those type of incomes. They usually get. I think it's a 1099 as well. I'm blanking right now, but they'll get another tax form for that as well. So if you have interest income, royalties, income from oil and gas, I would typically wait until you've received your those forms for them, and sometimes you might have to request them depending on what banking institution you have or who holds the funds. So for those type of people or for those type of taxpayers, I think they're going to have to really be aware of what income they need to report anyway before trying to come in and file a return. So if you're still waiting on certain documents, I would maybe give us a call and say, hey, I'm still waiting on a couple 1099s and whatnot, but can I plan an appointment for the end of March or the second week of March when I should have them. So that's what I would be doing if I was in that situation where I had extra forms of income that other people don't typically have. But the other thing too is that all of your income together still has to be below $57,000. And I know one of the things that you had mentioned that it sounds like a lot of information that we're requiring to bring in, but this is required by every site, not just VITA sites, but you're required by law to certify and verify who you are, your identity, through two forms of identification, through a valid photo ID and through a copy of your Social Security card, and that's required at every single place you go, whether you're paying money for someone to prepare your return or not. The IRS is pretty strict about people filing returns for confidentiality reasons.
If you're still waiting on an important 1099 and it still hasn't come in by the tax deadline, is there a way you can request an extension or something like that?
You can. I would always call in if it's pretty late in the tax season, you still haven't got it. There's certain ways that you can work around it. I think the IRS takes the position that it's your responsibility to file what you do have. So if it's the employer's fault or the institution that issues the 1099's fault for not getting it to you in a timely fashion, typically what they would have you do is file what you have anyway, with the knowledge that information is being withheld from you outside of your choice, or that you're still waiting for something. And there's a number of things you could do at that point. You could either file for an extension for no penalty, where you'll file the return after the filing deadline when you get the actual documents that you need, or if the person that's issuing the 1099 is for any reason acting inappropriately, or they're just withholding information per force, you can report them to the IRS based on their business EIN number or their tax ID number. So there's a number of ways that citizens are able to continue filing even if they're missing documents that they know that they need. But I would just, if that's your situation, I would just call in and kind of chat about it and see what kind of the best option or route is for your in your own particular situation.
Okay, now this is a silly question here. There are still some people in this country that think that Native people don't pay taxes. So this is a pretty good way to prove that, yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
The warning flags for something like you're filing and Either it's the service that you're working with or an employer who doesn't send you the correct paperwork. Are there things that maybe a taxpayer would want to look out for?
Um, I'm trying to think of examples I can give that wouldn't break some confidentiality. I would say if for whatever reason, if an employer or a institution that is legally required to issue a 1099 is withholding information, whether that be issuing a 1099 that is incomplete, that doesn't have their full taxpayer identification number on it, that's cause for concern. So, for instance, like when everyone receives their own 1099s, there should be, unless specified otherwise, there should be, the number of the business EIN or their federal identification number, as well as your own Social Security number. All of those numbers should be present on the forms, and it's odd when they're covered up because whoever's preparing the return, has had to take, a number of certification courses through the IRS to even be able to work with confidential data, and they need to be able to work and identify those numbers and plug them in correctly, or the return won't come out correctly. So I would say that if any information is being withheld on an actual 1099 where the entire number of the employer isn't visible, their federal identification number, or anything like that, those typically start signaling some warning bells in my mind.
Oh, yeah, and then you don't want to get caught being on the wrong side of that fence. Excuse me here. The situation for many Native people sometimes makes it tough for them to understand all the tax language and the requirements, or even the distance they may have to travel on. Some of those back roads get pretty muddy and unpassable. So is there anything that you all offer for folks who are having trouble actually just physically getting this done?
Yeah, we'll be traveling out. So I've reached out to several of the community centers that we're hoping to have a recurring traveling date to, starting in March, probably I would say the second half of March through the end of the filing season. We'll have some traveling dates, but also I think for the first time we're anticipating trying to target River Spirit to get a lot of local community members in the Tulsa area to be able to file their taxes. So we will be offering some traveling dates out into the community centers where hopefully it'll reduce, the drive times and the distances where so that they'll be able to come in and as opposed to driving all the way to Okmulgee.
Okay, well, you mentioned River Spirit, which raised another question for me. Gambling winnings, you've touched on the subject before, but if someone has a really good night at a casino, is there a cash limit that where they will have to report their winnings, or praise be, someone were to hit the lottery and multi-million dollars? How are those things handled and what's required?
It depends on the bank, like where you, or it depends on the gaming institution who awards the money. So some casinos withhold taxes already, and some don't. And if you are a regular gambler, then you usually can get a profit and loss report from the casino that you frequent. So those are things that I would definitely bring in. I'm off the top of my head, I don't remember if there is a threshold that you have to report it. I would just say that I think most gaming institutions at this point, they automatically do take out, withhold at least state and federal tax on it. So most people are generally going to be okay. I would say though that if you know you have gaming winnings and you did get tax documentation for it, it is in your best interest to be honest about it and go ahead and bring that in.
Right. The tax folks did get Al Capone, didn't they? So you're going to have to pay attention. Now, we have talked with staff members there in the past about the program, and as we start counting down the days to the income tax filing deadline. What happens to your office if someone was wanting to avail themselves of your services? What do they have to do?
So we are currently hiring tax professionals to help us out for the remainder of the filing season. You can look that job up on, what is it, MSS dot, let me look it up. It's the Mvskoke Creek Nation staffing page. And if you go there, the first page, it'll still list the tax position. So if you're wanted help out there, you can definitely look into the job description and then just follow the steps through the Mvskoke staffing page to get an interview, and if you're a good fit and whatnot. So that's one of the ways. We definitely are always looking for good quality volunteers. And we also are working with the College of Mvskoke Nation. We have at least one student intern who's getting some clerical and business administration experience, and that's helping out. So we're open to a number of different volunteers. I know last year we had a couple of college students, but we also had a couple of community members that had previous experience either working with taxes or doing some sort of accounting work. So it was always nice to have those type of people. But this year we have an official position that we're hiring for now.
Okay.
It's a temporary position, only through the end of tax season. But yeah, we are hiring.
Well, it'd be good to have those extra hands to handle the
Certainly.
Well, the amount of business now is going to pick up between now and the tax deadline. What happens for client-wise? I mean, all of a sudden it goes from a trickle to a flash flood. What happens with the request for your services?
I think. Well, it was really heating up for a while, obviously, but I think with the snowpocalypse weather, it's kind of died off a bit. We have gotten a bunch of calls, and unfortunately, I was out of office handling a different emergency for several days last week. So I'm still playing a little bit of catch up myself, but we'll definitely get everyone that's interested in getting an appointment scheduled. And it's picking up right now, and I know we're booked at least tomorrow and next week. And the slots are filling up fast. So,
okay. Well, how long does an appointment typically last?
It's pretty quick, actually. So the longest part is you have to fill out an intake form, and other than that, you just provide all the documents. We scan them in the system, and then that's pretty much it. We do have a policy where we're required to reach out to you within 3 business days after you've scanned in your documents. Technically, it's 3 business days of our days of operation, which are going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and we have a work day on Fridays where we don't take appointments, but we will be working on taxes. So, for instance, if you come in on a Tuesday, we should reach out to you. I would hope by the end of that week, but certainly by that following Tuesday is the deadline for us to get back to you and go over your return and get it all worked out. So. I would say, within a couple of days of your appointment, you should get a call back and start going over the details of your 2020 return.
Okay. Now, I think every TV comedy that I've ever seen just about has their IRS program, their tax show, where people are standing in long lines with wads of paper and some pretty poor excuses. Does that sort of thing show up? I mean, you seem to be able to avoid that by making appointments, but you get crowds with some pretty lame stuff.
Yeah. So for the days that we travel out to the community centers, we'll be taking walk-ins. So there will be some of that at some point, I'm sure. But for the most part, because of the pandemic, because we're virtual and the tribal government offices are closed, we're just not really in a position to really ever have those type of lines kind of building up, whether they're inside or outside. So anything that we can do to avoid that, at least commonly throughout the week and during our normal government operations, is going to be it's not going to be privy, it's going to be preferred. So I think, what we usually do, and some people, they felt more comfortable. Do you mind if I stay in my car and fill this out and then just give you my documents to go scan in and do that? So if that's the comfort level, if the taxpayer sets up an appointment and they feel particularly vulnerable and they would rather us come out to their car and do all that stuff, then we can arrange to do that. It can truly be 100% virtual at that point. But yeah.
Okay, so you are taking some safety precautions because of the virus.
We are, yeah, and that's the biggest reason that we decided to move virtual, is to mitigate the spread of COVID, but also the government offices remain closed, and so we can't unilaterally open our offices when there's still none of the other offices are open. That's another consideration we tried to make.
Okay, well, that's a lot of information you've shared for us today. I hope I've hit some of the basic questions people want to know, except this one. Now, if someone wants help, wants to make an appointment or just talk to you and get some information, how do they contact you?
You can reach me at 918-549-2767 or 918-549-2607. And I guess the last thing I would say is that we are filing, or we will prepare McGirt-related amendments for the current year. We will not prepare amendments for previous years, unfortunately. That's going to be a service that you typically will have to pay for, and one that we unfortunately just don't have the staffing to really be able to do thousands of amendments for dating back to 2017. So if you qualify and you would like to file a McGirt-related amendment, we will prepare it, but it will be the taxpayer, their sole responsibility to submit that amendment. So typically when you file an amendment or file for an exemption, I'm misspeaking. We will file exemptions or prepare the exemptions for the current year. We will not file amendments, so we won't go back and change previous year tax returns to get the state income tax exemption, but we will file or we will prepare exemptions for the current year. So anytime you file an amendment or an exemption, if it's the current year and you're filing an exemption, the taxpayer is required to physically mail that copy into the Oklahoma Tax Commission. So then that will still be the case this year. So if you choose to do the McGirt-related exemption, we can prepare it for you, but it will be solely up to the taxpayer to turn it in. And the nation has no opinion or any role other than preparing that return. We will have no we have no stake or stance in the outcome of the exemption. Whether the citizen's exemption is approved or not is not something that we have any say or do in. So we can help prepare it, but that's the extent of what we'll be able to do.
Well, for someone like me, that would be wonderful. That's a huge step in the right direction. But I think I've got a good accountant, so we'll just go that route. Let him worry about it and keep it straight for me. Well, I want to thank you once again. We appreciate it. And if there's something else that comes up between now and the tax deadline, let me know and we'll try and pass it on.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Mr. Five.
Nga.
Mado.
Okay, Zach Harjo with the business people. I've forgotten the title. The business people who are handling that. So if you've got a tax question or problem, you might need some help with getting it prepared, give them a buzz, and they can probably do that. We're going to take a short pause here, and we'll be back and talk to some folks who are helping the homeless down south. Stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio here on The Brew, 106.3 FM and 1240 AM.
Who am I? Am I native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me, because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am, and meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians. Who am I? Am I Indian? Just 'cause I'm a girl from the res, don't make things up about me. What if I move away? Then who am I? Some kids try meth just to escape, but then I think about my grandma, my little brother, my beadwork, my poetry, and I think, I like who I am, and I know meth is not for me.
Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on 1240 The Brew. We're speaking now with Lana Harjoshi, who's working with a group down in the southern part of the Creek Nation to help some of the homeless and the folks who are having a hard time. Lana, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Okay, now first of all, we want to know who you are and real quickly, and then the group you're working with to help the less fortunate down there.
Well, I'm Lana Harjoshi, and I'm a resident here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I started a organization called Raising Native Hope in 2017, about November. And what I do is I help our Native brothers and sisters who are on the streets here in Tulsa. And what I try to do with them is try to help them with getting help with their CDIBs or their state IDs, or if they need some kind of paperwork done for the tribe, such as, not just getting their CDIBs, but maybe getting their 8x10s, or trying to connect them with families or some sort, maybe they need some clothes or some work boots for work, and able to get a job, or some sort to get them to better their lives and get them off the streets from where the conditions that they're in now. So that's basically what I do now.
Okay, I have to correct myself here. For some reason, I got hooked. I was thinking you were down around Okima or something like that. But
I was born in Okima.
Oh, there it is. Okay. The situation in Tulsa is not one that a whole lot of people know much about. We've seen a few news pieces about it. Some of them are just plain old poverty porn kind of thing. But Sterling Harjo did his movie Miko, and it looked at some of the people on the streets there. Do you have any feel for how many creeks may be there, or how many people that you help out? Any numbers there at all, or a ballpark estimate?
Well, all I can say is right now, since I've started this, I've worked with like 72 people, and out of that, maybe 30, 35 people are Mvskoke. That I can't really give you a ballpark because there's so many different tribes and that are needing so much help. But the situation that I find with a lot of these guys, they're out of jurisdiction and they can't get the help. So that's where a lot of them are having issues of being on the street, and what they're not getting the help they need from the tribes. There's not a lot of people out there that's strictly helping tribal. Yes, there's a lot of organizations here in Tulsa that help, the homeless. But we need people that target Native Americans that will work strictly with Native Americans and helping them get where they need to be. And so that's why Raising Native Hope is part of what we're doing now, is strictly working with Natives.
The images that often come to mind when we discuss homeless in general are people with shreds of blankets or an old tent somewhere under in a park hidden away, or underneath a highway overpass in the concrete cubicles there. Is that the kind of folks that you see?
We do see a lot of that. We do also see a lot of people living in their cars that no longer work. We have people who do live in abandoned housing. There are some that are living with somebody, but the deal of it is, what I look at is, there's two types of homeless. You got the homeless who are living with friends or family, but then you also have the homeless that are actually under no shelter. And those are the ones that I strictly work with also. As far as you see, under the bridges, yes, there's a lot of our natives that live under bridges. There's a lot of them that live in the park. And the majority that you see of them that do live like that, they don't want to go to the shelters. There's too much whatever you call it, rough housing, too much drugs. There's a lot of alcoholism and everything anyway among our homeless. But they don't want to go to these places, or they've either been kicked out, no longer been able to come back. There's capacity that they have to look at, how many people they can house. Some of them, there's rules, but they're asking these guys to be in at a certain time if they have a job. And if they have a job, then, they can't get from work on the bus to the place where they need to be. So they miss that deadline of being in to the shelters. So they don't have a bed for them that night. So that's a lot of the issues that you do see. A lot of these guys have been searching for some kind of housing. And I do know if we had housing for our relatives, then I think that would be something that you would see less of them being on there. We have a lot of them, like I said, with alcoholism that has been asking for treatment. Well, then now we have an issue with finding treatment for them. It's not so easy for them to get treatment for alcoholism because, let's take our tribe, for example. I've called. They have to go to one of the clinics and they have to see one of the clinicians. And then from there, they have to be seen 2 or 3, maybe 4 times before they can say, well, needs to get treatment. Well, then, those 3, 4 times, that could be within, 2, 3, 4 months. And by then, that it's like they've lost time. Then you got to look at transportation, getting to and from the clinics. So that's, some of the other issues that, causes a lot of this homelessness. And there's not just 1 or 2 reasons that they're out there. Some of them may have family may have passed away, and that they were living with that family member. And when that family member passed away, they lost housing. Some of them have lost the jobs because of this COVID that happened this last year. And with that, they lost their work and their housing. And just as well as I do, once you live in an apartment or you're renting a house and you can't pay, well, that goes on your credit. And then when they go to check on it, well, this person has been evicted because they can't pay. Well, then now they have to look at another stumbling block that they face. So now it's harder to get housing for them then. There's some that have been disconnected from family for a very long time. And they just need that hand up. And that's all Raising Native Hope does. We're not, just giving out things. We're trying to lift them up to a better area. Some of them have fines that they have to pay off. Or some of them are just coming out of prison or jail, and they have just been left out there with no direction on where to go for help or any direction to go to the next step to get better. It's just like, opening the door and say, okay, get out. And that's what some of them are facing as well. So there's like all kinds of scenarios that we, overlook. And finding out why are they out there, and their stories are out there that are heartbreaking, and we just got to find out what's the main problem. And I like to tell everybody, all of these organizations are great, and they all help, in one way or another. But we're all doing the exact same thing, and we got to cross that bridge. We got to do a follow-up. Okay, let's get them into treatment if they need treatment. Let's find out what's causing the issues of the drug or alcohol situation, get them past that stumbling block. If they need to get into housing, let's get them into housing. But let's not just stop there. Let's follow them for a year and help them, to the next step. If something comes up, okay, what's that hurdle? Let's help them through that next step. And that's what I think that we all, as organizations, helping me to do with these guys.
Let me ask you a couple of things here. Now, you mentioned the COVID virus, and we just went through a patch of really brutal winter weather. Did we lose anyone to either one of those that you are aware of or that you have tried to help in the past?
We haven't lost anybody because of COVID, but because of the weather, we had lost a brother last year. He wasn't Mvskoke, but he was of another nation. But the COVID has affected these guys a lot. We have had several that had gotten sick. But, with the clinics and the hospitals, they were able to get some kind of treatment. We did have a brother that had COVID pretty bad. He did get help through the clinic, and now he lost his job and his housing because of that. And another organization had helped him get a motel for the time being of his during his time of COVID. When he was able to get back out there, and he was cleared by the doctors, he was able to find another job and get back into housing. But as far as us losing a brother or sister because of COVID, the ones I work with, we haven't lost.
Well, that's good to hear, and hopefully with the vaccination program now underway that we can prevent any of that. Now, do you direct people to the clinics for COVID shots? What's your connection there?
I do talk to a lady at the Tulsa Center off of 6th and Peoria, and the problem with getting the shots and everything is, again, it's getting transportation. I know that our tribe has offered shots here and there in different areas, but the problem is getting all of these guys at once to that one spot maybe to get a shot. We need to get it here in Tulsa and get it for a couple of days, I believe. But then, again, it's not open for everybody yet. The shots, are for those who are 65 years and older or those who are at high risk. Now, with these guys being on the street, they're considered, in my eyes, and to a few other people at the clinic, high risk because of the living conditions. So we're not seeing those guys getting their shot. And again, a lot of these guys don't have charts because they don't have their CDIDs, they don't have their state IDs, they don't have their Social Security cards. And a lot of these things that they do need, is government issued. So they can't get those IDs sometimes because they have to wait for a birth certificate. Then they have to wait for the Social Security card to get their driver's license or their state ID. So that's a lot of things that we face in order for them to get a chart even made.
Right, the paper challenge is enormous there.
Yes.
Now, question here. How do you keep this program going? Do you have funding?
Actually, it's because of citizens. It's not just Mvskoke citizens. We have Cherokee citizens. We have citizens from all over that has heard about Raising Native Hope. And we have a donation page on PayPal, and they donate to that. If they don't donate cash, then we have the Tulsa Creek Community Center, who has been very, kind to let us use a box. And so they drop items off at that box. So we'll pick things up. They can call me, and I can meet them usually here in the Tulsa area to pick up items. So we just had a fundraiser in January, Indian tacos, and people had brought in coats and blankets and food and all kinds of things. So it's because of the citizens that we are able to do what we're doing. And, we don't have any grants yet or anything like that. I haven't found anybody that can do a grant or would be willing to spend time in writing out one for it. But we're just doing what we can, and by the, creators' hands and the citizens, that's who deserves all the credit.
A grassroots movement there. Huh?
Yes.
You mentioned donations, and can someone drop off clothing or perhaps some other type of donation? I mean, do you collect those kind of things too?
Yes, of course. Like I said, at the Tulsa Creek Community Center, they do have a drop-off box during their hours, Monday through Friday. I believe it's 9 to 5, but because of the pandemic, they would have to call and set up a time to drop those items off. As far as food, we just ask for non-perishable food. We also have a Facebook page. If they go to Raising Native Hope on Facebook, there are a few posts that shows different snack pack items. That is something I didn't mention, that every week we give out snack packs and hygiene packs. Those snack packs, they range between $10 to $15 a week per person. And what it consists of is like 2 bottles of water, maybe a couple of packages of protein, like maybe the seasoned tuna or Spam, or like maybe ravioli, a can of raviolis, a can of soup, ramen noodles. There's all kinds of things that we don't think about. Could be a snack pack and make a meal. Peanut butter crackers, just anything. And we also give out packs of the flavored water, for the flavored water. I forget what they're called, but they're the water packs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy those myself, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
The effort to keep this going now, it sounds like that you're handling a lot of this load personally. Now, is that the case?
It is. I do this weekly by myself. When we first started out, we had several volunteers that came out, and of course, as life gets in our way, sometimes we can't continue doing what we're doing. So I've been doing this alone by myself for about a year. Then my son stepped in and helped until he got a job. So again, I'm alone again, but I'm always looking for volunteers to help. I go out on Wednesdays. I start out at about 10:30 in the morning, and I personally get home between 5 or 7 p.m. And what I do, I don't go out to one specific spot. I go out all over Tulsa. I go from east, north, south, and west side, central area. I do not go downtown because there is a lot of help down there. Although there are a lot of natives there that need help, I just go to areas that where these organizations are further downtown, and that's basically where everybody's at. So I go, I look on the streets for somebody, and if they're native, I'll give them a snack pack, I'll give them a hygiene pack, and I'll ask them, hey, do you need something? Do you need like a blanket or some clothes? And I'll continue visiting that area. If I hear about a new area, I'll go visit, and check that out. I'm getting ready to have a what I call boots on the ground, hopefully the end of March, around March 20th, and relocate because I just had a knee surgery, so I've been out since the 8th of March, or 8th of February, I'm sorry. And so hopefully by March I'll be able to get out and about again. So I'll need all the help I can get to go walk these streets again and find out where everybody went, because they don't stay in one spot. They continue and move.
And trying to meet this need, you're telling me that you go all over Tulsa, perhaps not as much downtown, which has a different world down there. Are there times when you feel like maybe you shouldn't have come to this place, or there's something dangerous here, or a pack of people, or something that makes you really nervous and uncomfortable?
When I started out, I did feel that way, but now now that I've gotten to know a lot of these guys, I don't. These guys have become like pretty much like a family, and when you get that relationship with them guys, you become part of them too. So they'll tell you places to go and what the area is like, or like I may say, well, I heard about this place across the bridge, and I'll tell them the area. They'll tell you, no, don't go over there, or they'll tell you why not to go over there. And so I feel pretty safe when I do go out. I don't feel anything negative, but I do know where areas are that I shouldn't go to. And it's only because of everybody else's words of mouth. And again, it's like I get that trust and I gain that trust of these guys to the point where they'll tell me and they'll talk to me about things instead of just going out there and say, hey, here's this for you. Oh, can you tell me where some other guys are? Well, they don't know you and they don't know the reason you're out there. So there's the difference between the two.
Tell me about another difference here. So far, most of our discussion, I guess, by default, has been talking about males who are in distressed situations. What about women? Is there some sort of breakdown? Is it mostly men out there, or are there few? How does that balance out?
There are a lot of men, but there are also a lot of women out there. They're not so easy to talk to. They're kind of really reserved, and you really got to put an extra effort to talk to them and get them to trust you a lot. Of course, there are a lot of men out there, like I said, and they're more bold in talking to you. But they're also, as well, kind of skittish. They don't know what the reason is for you. But I don't have I don't have that many women that I help, but I do know there are several Native women downtown. And the problem that we have to look at with our women is there's also sex trafficking that will get them possibly like home or a place so they can live for a little while. You got to look at these other people that are seeing that there's a woman that is homeless. Okay, what can we do to get her to do something for us? And so you got drugs also that then they start selling drugs. Then they start, again, sex trafficking, and then that's a really dangerous area right there. We lose a lot of women because of that. We have seen women in the past couple of years that has went that direction, and they we haven't heard or seen of them, but we have heard from other people saying that they are alive, but again, that we just don't know where they're at. But the problem of that is what happens to them once they get into those situations and they decide they don't want to do it anymore. That life for them then becomes dangerous, not just because of the activities they were doing, but it's because they want to get out of it and change their lives. So, well, we got to look at these guys that helped them get into this situation. Well, now you owe me, so we're not going to let you go. So that takes you into another new world that we don't help with. but we have partnered up with Noise, and anytime that they have a missing woman or anything, maybe even a male, a missing person, they'll call us and let us know, get us a picture of this person. And if we know who they are on the streets, we'll say, hey, we do have that person. We do know that person. So we try to partner up with them.
Okay, Lana, we're running out of show here. Now, if someone wanted to assist you, to volunteer, to make a donation, either clothing or financial, or how would someone get in touch with you?
Well, again, if you would like to make a donation of clothes or something like that, we have the Tulsa Creek Community Center. If you would like to make a financial donation, we have PayPal, which is paypal.me.nativehomeless, or you can contact me at 918-527-3834, and I can meet you, or I can give you an address where you can send a check or money order addressed to Raising Native Hope.
Okay. Now, in the last 30 seconds we have here, how does it make you feel when this happens, when things work out like that?
When things work out, it fills my heart. And people have asked me, why do I do this? I do this because I used to be one of them. So it fills my heart when somebody can help them or reach out to help somebody else.
So that you can pass it on. If it worked for you, then pass it on, and maybe it'll work for someone else.
Exactly.
All right, Lana, we want to wish you the best of luck in your efforts. Perhaps you can hook up with some nonprofit organization and get a few grants, although I know that is kind of a two-edged sword. But we want to just thank you for the care and the effort that you're making here. Well, listen, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again. We'll keep our eyes and ears open for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Lana Harjoshi with Natives Raising Hope. That's it for us this week on Mvskoke Radio. Back in the saddle again. We'll see how the weather treats us, and we'll talk to you again. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. But